Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Gamespot Aftermath, where we talk about kind of big events that have happened over the course of the week or something huge that's happened. And in this case, Apple's announcement of the iPhone 4S, brand new phone. It's the iPhone, everyone's excited. Now, I am joined by Shaw McInnes.
Hey, Giancarlo.
Hi.
Hi.
Also, Sarju Shaw.
Hey, what's up?
And John Davison.
Hello.
Hi. Actually, Sarge, I want to hit you up first, and let's talk a little bit about hardware. Now, what makes the iPhone 4S different from its predecessor other than the S at the end of the 4?
It stands
The
for
S
Sean.
is pretty, but it's basically just the iPad 2 internals. It has the A5 chip, which is nice and quick, dual core, 1 gigahertz. And the GPU is actually what makes everything really tick for gaming, and that also gets an upgrade. It's the the SGX 543 MP2, which is a series of letters and numbers that no one cares about.
that one.
Oh, we know it well.
Yeah.
But the kicker here is that it's the same thing used inside the Vita, except with 2 less cores.
Oh, okay.
That's,
Yeah.
I mean, so we actually saw at the conference, we saw Infinity Blade 2.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's Unreal Engine stuff running on the iPhone. We saw it before with the iPhone 4. But, I mean, it looks like the games are just going to start looking better and better. I mean, what does that mean for competition against the Vita and the 3DS?
For me, Nintendo's in trouble now, right? I mean, so Shadowgun came out last week or the week before using Unity, with the upgrades on the Unity engine. It looked a bit like Gears of War. We got Infinity Blade, which is, they're now doing things with, like, crazy lighting effects with Unreal Engine. We've heard that the Unreal Dev Kit now basically has a push to iOS button in it, for want of a better explanation. So when the guys are working on stuff, they can. The engine is that adaptive now, and I think we're going to see better and better games. And I mean, the big thing, Shadowgun was $8, and Infinity Blade, I think the most it's ever been is $9.99. And when you're doing that, a $39.99 Vita game starts to look. It's like, what are you giving me for the extra $30? And I think that's going to be the big challenge. Sony and Nintendo need to lean all the way into it's a games machine. It's got to be a specialized device. But I think what they're trying to do is go the other way and try to chase the phones and the tablets. And it's probably a mistake at this point.
Yeah, it seems odd that Nintendo is just so reluctant to grab on to sort of the ecosystem that makes the iPhone so successful for games in terms of, the garage developers that they don't really want to court. I mean, they pretty much said that up front.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's one of the bigger mistakes that they've made so far with DSiWare, is that it's kind of a barren wasteland for indie gaming. And I think one of the primary ways that Nintendo and Sony are going to be able to catch up with Apple is just embracing the garage developers, which, I mean, Sony has made more of a concerted effort with things like PSP minis and whatnot, and they've got a great indie gaming relationship, at least on PlayStation Network. I'm going to be interested to see how much that translates to downloadable Vita games.
Now, Sean, you actually have an iPhone 3G.
I do have an iPhone 3G, which is ancient, and it's only got about a week and a half left of service time on it, because it's about to get replaced very fast with a 4S.
So, I mean, when you think about upgrading to the 4S, I mean, are you kind of, what does the gaming element mean to you as someone who is about to upgrade, a pretty major upgrade?
Well, I mean, my phone is so old that it doesn't support things like Game Center. So, so a lot of those.
That's a rough one.
Yeah, a lot of those social elements, like the leaderboard stuff, is not supported on my phone, and just the fact that everything is just going to go that much faster. Games are just going to load up in a flash. And that's really what the iPhone is best for, just pulling out, the phone on my train ride into work, playing a game real quickly, sliding it back in my pocket, and I'm done.
I think that's the most powerful thing about what particularly but I think Android as well. I mean, we can't discount that.
Right.
I mean, they bust out numbers today: 250 million iOS devices sold, and then 150 million Android. That's 400 million devices just on 2 operating systems. That's more than twice the size of the DS market. It's 6 times the size of the PSP market. I mean, and then when you factor in, as many people are playing games on these things as are playing on DS. I mean, in terms of just time spent and what people are using for, they're already right there banging on Nintendo's door. But the ubiquity of it is what you really can't, it's always with you. And and you always have access to the store. And I think that's the real thing that, I think Nintendo particularly are struggling with, is just pushing these experiences into people's hands in a way that, oh, well, I'll go check that out. And Nintendo needs to make it cool again to develop for Nintendo. I think whenever you hear about dudes bailing from a big studio they're going to one of two places. They're going to Zynga or something like it, because they're chasing stock options as much as anything, or they're forming their own iPhone development studio because they can go and make something awesome that they have creative control over, and just 4 or 5 guys, and it's they're turning their backs on the 200 people project and 20 million, $50 million projects, and say they want total artistic control, and they can do that. And Sony and Nintendo needs to start courting those guys again, because they seem to be getting left behind.
Well, and I think what's interesting too about the iPhone 4S is so it has that new streaming. Is that a new streaming functionality where it can stream games while you're playing?
AirPlay,
right. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and this is something that Nintendo is obviously kind of experimenting with the Wii U. And I just wonder how much is Apple's kind of progression of hardware announcements going to affect the consoles more now than it is the handhelds? Because it seems like the handhelds are pretty much playing catch up at this point, but the consoles are still in a position where they can kind of stay ahead of the curve. But how much influence are we really going to see in that respect?
AirPlay, I mean, I'm not sure it'll make too much of a difference in games. It's more of a factor of, I mean, can you actually look at a TV and try to maneuver on a touch screen? It doesn't work very well. Mm-hmm. But I think for videos and other items like that, maybe other applications, it'll work very well, but not for gaming.
And what's your opinion about? I mean, obviously, Apple announces one of these, every year.
Yeah, every year.
I mean, is it possible for the traditional handheld manufacturers to kind of get themselves into that groove where they start announcing a new model every year?
I'm not sure they can do that, because at least with a phone, I mean, you have the set market that keeps upgrading. I mean, I probably won't go to the 4S because I already have a 4, but you already have Sean here with the 3G, and it's only 2 years. But to say the same thing to people that own PSPs, every 2 years you need a new one. I think they could do that with the Xperia Play. Mm-hmm. But with a non-mobile attached base, I think it'd be incredibly difficult.
Is there any sort of sentiment of disappointment that this wasn't just flat out an iPhone 5, whatever that means?
There's a
that it
lot
doesn't
of
have a 5 instead of a 4S?
To me, it depends so much on which model you're on right now. Like if you're on the 4 and you were expecting like a brand new physical design and you were expecting something that was just going to totally floor you with newness, you're probably disappointed. But if you're like me and you still have the 3G and you're just excited about, the possibility of getting a new iPhone, then I think it all depends on what your expectations were.
I think my final question to the group is where does Apple go from here? I mean, they're kind of on the hot streak and with games and just the market as a whole. I mean, what else can they do at this point to already improve their position or to just completely dominate everything?
So I think one of the scariest things for Nintendo and Sony was a pie chart that I think Tim Cook showed during the presentation, which was overall handset ownership in the world and Apple. And it was a very humbling pie chart, too. Apple was just this tiny sliver at about 5%. And they said, you know what? We've been doing really well, but we can still do better. So I think they need to sort of they need to find a way to go after the lower cost phone market. I think if they want to tap into that market, that's something that they could do. But yeah, I mean, obviously they've done pretty successfully so far.
I think
Sarge or John?
Go on, Sarge.
I think they'll easily see success, and in the same way Sean was saying, they need to get down to that lower bracket where that's just using candy bar phones still. And I think that'll happen in time when these things just get cheaper and cheaper. And the 3GS is basically free now with a contract. You push that 2 years out, and it won't be the fastest phone, but it's still better than any candy bar phone.
Right. John?
From a gaming perspective, the thing that blows me away is right now they're not even trying. They've taken a sizable chunk of our time and money that we apply to games. And Steve Jobs has been pretty openly dismissive about video games and you look at Game Center as an app, and it's that ugly green baize wrap nonsense that's totally out of character. I mean, it's it's almost dismissive, and yet they're kicking everyone's butt. Imagine what would happen if they started trying, and they would just totally dominate.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, as a gaming device, there's always something that's really surprising. I mean, it seems like every other week or so I download a game that I'm just really surprised by. Yeah. And I think that's something that the handhelds we have now really lack. I mean, you're always waiting for that big release on the 3DS, or you're going to wait for that big release on the Vita, whereas on the iPhone, there's so much discovery. There's such a huge discovery element where you just kind of search through the store and you come across something that happens to be good, and that's always really exciting. And I think that's something that the current handhelds lack, and something
it's so
that
cheap to experiment.
Yeah, and I think
you
that's
lose $1.
yeah,
I'll live.
and I think that's something that Apple actually can improve is the discovery element. I think the App Store still has kind of a ways to go, even though they're getting better at kind of packaging games in a way that, you know, makes kind of elevates the better ones to the top. But I still think there are some good games that kind of get buried and don't really ever get a chance. So that's one aspect they can improve. But so there it is, the iPhone 4S. Let us know in the comments if you think about buying one. Let us know what you think in terms of if you game on your mobile device. And stay tuned at Gamespot.com for more coverage on the iPhone.